What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the PokerNews Podcast. It's episode number 493. We are just encroaching on that 500 episode. I cannot wait. I guess it'll probably be when we're at the series, which is the best time. I'm Sarah Herring, joined by Jeff Platt. Jeff, you're on that day 2 life today. Like, we can barely squeeze in a podcast.
Day 2 today at the Venetian for me at the time of taping this podcast. Very fortunate to kick off this summer poker season pretty well. I'm fired up about it. It must be, Sarah, that PN pod run good. Jump on the show, play a tournament, make it day 2. Easy game.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it works. So if you're out there and you're not sure if you want to get on the PN pod, just know you've got day 2s in your future if you do. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We'll all be rooting for you by this time. Oh, wow, look, you can see all my lighting in these glasses. I know, by this time tomorrow, Jeff will be on his way to a final table. I think when you guys hear the podcast, he'll be just getting ready to give us his winner interview next week. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm wearing these really dope-ass spade shades. Now, for those of you who are watching, you noticed, but for those of you who are listening, okay, maybe you didn't. I want to give a shout out to Brad Owen. He's a buddy of the guy who owns this company, Spades Sunshades, and I like them. I've got all kinds of them. We're going to be doing some giveaways. We've got tons of colors. This one's tangerine. I specifically asked for tangerine, but I didn't want it to get camouflaged back here on the backdrop. But for some stylish and affordable sunglasses, check out Spades Sunshades. Their new summer sunglasses are out now with a wide variety of colors and polarized lenses. Oh, I love that polarized lens life. Starting at only $20. Support the poker industry and put some style in your game by visiting spadessunshades.com and use the promo code PokerNews at checkout for free shipping, which also is key because am I the only one that cannot pay for shipping anymore in this life?
I think once Amazon came out with Prime, it became such a hassle to all of a sudden have to pay for shipping on certain sites. So I'm so with you on that free shipping life.
Do you remember when it was just like standard, like shit was going to cost like $15 if you had to ship something? And now I'm like, shipping, get out of here with that.
I'm not paying.
Yeah. No, I'm done with that life. Although I did read something that said that basically the American taxpayer pays like $1.50 for every like Amazon thing that gets shipped, which is sad, but I'll still rather pay for that.
That's fake news. Installed article.
Yeah. Well, either way, these glasses are the bomb. I've picked these polarized ones for my backdrop, but definitely check them out, you guys. $20 is reasonable. I got to protect these baby blues. Apparently, a lot of people. Actually, I just read an article too about the blue light from all of our, devices, and that it's increasing eye cancer, also macular degeneration. But yeah, you guys got to take care of your eyes. I got macular degeneration in my genes. Anyway, sorry you guys, I'm getting really sidetracked. I've been on vacation for like 5 days, so you can see I've got a whole lot of spice today.
Mother's Day trip for you, just being the perfect daughter, right?
Oh my gosh, it was the best ever, and like hanging out with my nieces. I don't know, lots of people don't like other people's kids, but like I just love other people's kids. I don't know what's up with me.
That's a truthful statement.
Yeah,
like, I'm glad that you like other people's kids.
Yeah, I think I might be alone, but we got a great show for you guys. We talked to JNandez Poker, PLO boss legend. We had him on at the end of last summer, and I have actually, people are always asking me, like, oh, who's your favorite interview, and like, who's your favorite guest, and I can never remember, but now I always snap no, JNandez was definitely one of my favorite guests on the podcast, and he's gonna blow your guys' mind this week. He's just such a positive kind of energy. I feel like he gets me going. It was a good way to like go into the holiday weekend. Let's talk a couple of stories here. I had everything open, but things got a little crazy. Val Vornicu won 12 WSOP rings, you guys. What is up with that?
And to get to number 12, he won back-to-back tournaments at the WSOP circuit at Harrah's, New Orleans. This is a guy who's known for just absolutely crushing the World Series of Poker circuit, and I think he's adapted his game perfectly to those kind of tournaments, those kind of formats, which do rely quite a lot on variance. But the way he plays, he's going to build that big stack or just get bounced, and he's on to the next one. And so he builds big stacks, huge stacks, and we've seen him do it during the summer as well. He builds those stacks time and time again. He wins event number 1 for $64K, and then the next day he goes out there and wins event number 3, a single day, for $24K.
NBD.
He was stunned. I'm stunned. It's an unbelievable accomplishment, not just to win circuit ring number 12, but to win back-to-back circuit tournaments.
I don't get how any of these guys do it. You know, we have a couple of back-to-back WPT winners, and it's, to me, it's always like, it's such a freakish accident to like be able to win a tournament anyways, like to do them back-to-back. And I feel like it happens often enough that I guess maybe we can like make a case that this is a game of skill. Just saying.
I would say so. Let your lawmakers know that there is skill involved in poker, and point to Val Vornicu's Hendon Mob as evidence.
Oh my gosh. And also there was that reminds me though, actually, I didn't even finish this article, but there was a big to-do that happened this weekend, or maybe last week. My husband sent me some stuff like, oh, things are happening in poker and it's going to be a big deal, but we'll get into the law stuff in a little bit. Now, I was going to ask you, I feel like this Valentine character, and I'm getting on his Hendon Mob to check right now, did he go deep in the main event at one point?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Because I'm like, I recognize him, and I feel like I was rooting for him even in that spot.
Yeah, he finished 23rd in the 2016 main event for the cool $270,000 or so. I mean, again, he's all about that poker life and that poker grind. You know, he's a guy now, he's successful enough where he doesn't have to travel to every single stop on the circuit, but he does it because he loves the game. Case in point here, his next cash on his Hendon Mob after his World Series of Poker main event score for $270K is an 11th place at a Lake Tahoe circuit event for $924.
Yes.
That's just what the guy does. He just grinds poker tournaments. He loves poker tournaments. I think it's awesome. Hats off to him.
I love those people. Those are my absolute favorite. It's like the Ari Engels, like the people who are going to play like 100K but are not afraid to like drop in a 500 event here and there. It's like, okay, you just love poker. I got it. I get it. Ugh,
in this Venetian event that we were talking about, I was sitting next to John Morgan, who has played the $1 million World Series of Poker one-drop tournament. And he was playing a $340 tournament at the Venetian where he said if he made day two, he wouldn't even be able to play. He just loves poker that much. He had to get into the mix and play a poker tournament. I love it, love it, love it.
Oh my gosh, I just love these people. And it's funny because obviously like there's, you know, after having watched the WSOP main event coverage for ages, it's just there are a few people that end up standing out, and this guy was definitely one. It might also be the dimples. He's got some like adorable dimples, which I'm such a sucker for. Man, I was just looking for this article that my husband sent me, but let's keep going in the meantime. Okay, so we've got a team over in Montenegro for the Triton Poker. Is it a classic? What are they calling it? Let's get on.
I believe they call it the Triton Super High Roller Series Montenegro.
Wow. You know, and it's, you always got to just nail it right on with these. And at a certain point, I'm like, I don't know. They're in Montenegro. There's a ton of sickos there. It's honestly, this is one I actually wanted to send myself there, but I sent someone else because it just made better sense. But the coverage that's been coming out of there has been so sick. It's all these people that you never see doing interviews, coming out, talking. It's like all these crazy bosses, Jungle Man, Tom Dwan, Phil Ivey, Patrick Antonius, Jason Kuhn, like every single piece of coverage that I've seen come out of this event so far. I'm just like, oh, these are the nuggets that you get like maybe one of every event, and they're getting like 5 or 6 a day. So you guys definitely want to go to Poker News for that coverage. And there's also, I know we're hyping, Triton has their own YouTube page, so we're making coverage for them there too. You can find the links to that on the Poker News YouTube page. But basically this, I had a couple meetings with the guy who's running the Triton Super High Roller Series Montenegro.
There we go.
And he was talking about this particular event, the one that Phil Ivey won. They're really trying to hype this particular variant of poker, live short deck tournament. And I think we made a video, in fact, about what a short deck tournament really is. But it's interesting. I do think there's definitely a lot of momentum in the direction of trying to figure out ways to make the game more fast and more fun, but still maintain the, you know, integrity and maintain, if you have an edge, you don't want to like totally eliminate that. But it seemed like these guys really were into it. Jason Kuhn talked about it, and I guess sort of the challenge of just trying a different variant and trying to find the edges again. I think a lot of these guys gets, you know, in a routine, something, or like in a style, and just to have it, the best minds together all play kind of a new variant. It seemed really cool.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Also, in short deck, they they're taking the deuces, the threes, the fours, and the fives out of the deck. So as you can imagine, it creates so much action. And that's why I would assume that all of these high roller guys started to play it more and more because of the action that it was able to create. There are a couple other rules that make it different than just your standard no limit Texas Hold'em game. But to see it in tournament form was pretty good because it almost introduced the game to a brand new audience. And especially when you had Phil Ivey on that stream, everybody's clicking on a video that is featuring Phil Ivey. There's a video that features Phil Ivey right now on PokerNews in his winner's interview with Laura, talking about potentially coming to Las Vegas in the summer to play a couple of World Series of Poker events. And we don't always get that Phil Ivey sighting in the summer in Las Vegas. So for him to say that, that's pretty enticing. That's pretty appealing to the casual poker fan and to the hardcore poker fan as well.
Amen. And it's, I guess I don't know if I'm supposed to even be saying this kind of thing, but there are certain people who, at a certain point in their career, their life, they don't have to do interviews. And quite frankly, they don't want to a lot of the time. But I love these, I think this Triton event specifically, I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this, but basically it's like these really wealthy Chinese businessmen who started this whole poker tournament series. And so all these guys want to play with those guys, love those guys, want to be invited to their games. And so they are more than happy to show up, play on the TV, give all the interviews, do all the coverage. And I'm just like, you know what, wealthy Chinese businessmen, thank you. The poker world thanks you.
I mean, everybody wins in this scenario. Mm-hmm. We've had interviews with Phil Ivey and with Jungle Man and Tom Dwan. When do you get all of those within the course of 3 days or so? It's perfect. It's perfect for the world.
I was gone, right? On vacation. I came back. I look at PokerNews. I'm like, dude, these are this is every interview I've been wanting for the last 2 years. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I hope that all this, poo-pooing of things going on in China at this point in terms of marketing and advertising doesn't, maybe it's going to close down some of these rooms as we saw last week, but maybe it'll just amp up those home games and keep these kind of poker tournament series going. Cause even these series, it's this was obviously geared towards just wealthy people, basically, right? The Triton series is not trying to have anybody come, and it's good for us. It's good for us to watch.
Yeah. Like we talked about, maybe when games move out of China, they'll move into different places like a Montenegro or like a Las Vegas, Nevada, where the big guys could come and play their high stakes, short deck action, and we could bring in some wealthy businessmen to play with them to make it worth their while.
Amen. All right. In other news, you guys, we've got Adrian Mateos. Used to be Adrian Mateos Diaz, but I think we've all agreed now we're just going to go with Adrian Mateos. He won the Winnamax Sismix. Is that French? What?
What's this mean?
And it should come as no surprise. Adrian Mateos is crushing everything basically. And I don't know. Obviously, Jeff, you live in the U.S. too, so we haven't had a lot of opportunity to play. But I've gotten a lot of feedback from players that actually Winnamax is one of the best online sites to play at. I'm not getting paid, guys. I'm just laying it out there. This is what I've heard from a lot of players is that I think maybe because it's on a smaller a smaller scale, the French market is segregated, although I think they are changing all of that. But at the moment, or at least the last few years, it's been segregated. And maybe because of that smaller size, they've been able to make a lot of adjustments and make a lot of shifts and advance their software a lot. And I've just heard that Winnamax is basically crushing. So it's good to see them in the news, making tournament series. And hopefully with this more open European market again, we can all enjoy some of that badass Winnamaxness.
Yeah, and I think Winnamax has put forth more of a budget towards their marketing campaign also. Usually at tournaments in which Winnamax pros like an Adrian Mateos or a Davide Katai or a Gail Bauman are running deep in, they'll have a camera crew follow them around. And this is a 4 or 5 person production crew. So they're not being cheap with it. And I think that they've been able to produce some videos that entice more people to play. And if they're able to expand their potential audience, like you said, Sarah, it's just great for the rest of the poker world. Competition is great. So if we have poker stars doing battle with Party Poker and then Winnamax and 888 step into the mix, it's just really good for the overall poker landscape.
Amen. And when someone nails something or something starts working, everybody jumps on board. And yeah, so I'm just super stoked on all these innovations. And our guest, JNandez, by the way, is definitely of the idea that poker's not dead. And I start to think that sometimes. I got to be honest with you guys. I get a little like, it's falling apart. And so, when you see innovations, when you see things being successful, it's, for those of us in this business, it's a relief. Yeah, I got to pay my bills, you guys. It's true.
That's true.
And speaking, though, of these kind of innovations and things that we can look forward to, we know that Jeff already has been playing on globalpoker.com, and he did a way better job explaining it, but I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about the Rattlesnake Open. Have you registered for the Global Poker Championships Rattlesnake Open yet? With $1.25 million in guaranteed cash prizes, a $100,000 guarantee main event, as well as huge trophies delivered right to your door, and other awesome giveaways you do not want to miss out. Top the Global Poker Championships leaderboard, and Global Poker will sort travel, accommodation, and tournament buy-ins for you to represent Global Poker in a live tournament. What are you waiting for? Head to globalpoker.com and register for the Rattlesnake Open today. Now, this is something they did at a Venetian event actually a couple months ago. They sponsored a few players, and I think it's a really cool, interesting idea to sponsor your average player, like you don't got to be the well-trained, get out of here, who is well-trained media in this world. But I like the idea of, I think Global Poker's whole concept is that they're a poker site for non-poker players, basically, or casual poker players, or I don't know, something along those lines. And so to have those type of people represent them at tournaments makes sense. I guess it's on board with the branding.
Yeah. I'd say they're trying to bring the home game atmosphere into the online world and then market that via live tournaments. You can see it in the way they set up their online games where you have the funny looking avatars and you can't use a HUD, so you don't have the math wizards being able to exploit their generic opponents. The structures are pretty good, but they're fun. It's not like a super deep tournament where you have to grind for 14 hours in order to win it. You can just sit down and play. Sarah, you have a glass of wine and play for 3 or 4 hours, and then tournament's over. Boom, you're done, and you're on to the next one. I think they've done a really good job so far of establishing themselves in the U.S. market. Speaking of needing competition, this probably needs some, and Global Poker's done a really good job so far. So,
I guess, yeah, there's so many other things to talk about, but I did see JNandez on Instagram today was saying that the Run It Once, so Phil Galfond obviously is Run It Once, and that his site, which should be launching this summer for online poker, that they're not going to allow heads-up displays. And JNandez was like, I think this is awesome. I think this is sick. What, as someone who obviously is playing a lot of poker, what are your opinions on the heads-up display and if it should or shouldn't be allowed?
Yeah, I really like what Galfond was saying, and he made it a point to say, me personally, Phil Galfond is not necessarily saying that having HUDs is a bad idea. Like, he's not trying to insult poker stars by not having HUDs at his site, and I think that's great because it can be super intimidating. Imagine if you're a player who's kind of interested in poker, you've played a little 1-2 at your casino, and then you want to jump on PokerStars, but maybe you're watching some streams on Twitch and you see these guys that are using HUDs and you see these numbers that are just all over the map. It'd be harder to entice you to jump into the game. Whereas on Run It Once, I think you're just naturally going to feel a little bit more comfortable if you're starting out, and you know that you aren't going to get exploited because at least at the lower limits, everybody is going to be an anonymous player. So I can't come attack you if I think that you're a weak player. You can't come attack me if you think I'm a weak player. Constantly look for me because everybody will be anonymous on the site, again, at least at the lower limit. So I really think it's very appealing to casual poker players and to players who are just starting out in the game.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things, even as we've been looking into some of these crypto-based sites, one of the things that people are the most excited about is like this anonymity. And yeah, I like that. I mean, of course I can see the case on the other side too, but I do like the idea of sort of everything existing in a bubble. Like, this is this one moment right now, like make a decision based on just this information. Also, it probably works in my favor because I'm sure you make the same mistakes over and over again. Like, if you don't train, like, you're just going to make the same mistakes again and again. All right. So I'm actually going to save, we got 2 more stories, one of which is really big. I'm going to save the last one, the human interest, the fun stuff, for the end. But let's talk a little bit about this U.S. Supreme Court case. You guys know that the legal stuff is definitely not my strong suit, but there was a lot of buzz last week about some potentially big implications in the poker space in several different places. And I keep looking for the article my husband sent me. I'm going to keep looking for it, but let's talk about this, sports betting, Jeff, and what you think, how that affects us.
So long story short, there was a law that was enacted back in 1992 that effectively said, hey, you can only bet on sports if you're in Nevada, or there are some lotteries in some states where you kind of put some parlays together, and that's it. Other than that, sports betting is prohibited. New Jersey challenged this law. It said it was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court agreed with them, therefore making that law unconstitutional. What it does is, or I should say what it doesn't, it's not like sports betting is all of a sudden, boom, legal across the country, sports books are opening everywhere. But what it does do is it gives individual states the rights to choose and to develop laws that would regulate sports betting, that would legalize sports betting, and that would tax sports betting. New Jersey is way ahead of the game because they're the ones who challenged this law. So New Jersey is going to have some sports books within the next couple of months. And from there, everything will be on a state-by-state basis. So maybe next is Pennsylvania. New York could be close. Delaware could be close. It could very well, Sarah, follow the exact same path that online poker has followed, whereas online poker is legal and regulated in Nevada, in New Jersey, in Delaware, soon to be in Pennsylvania. Sports betting, now legal in Nevada, soon to be in New Jersey, in Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So you can kind of see the same path forming. But again, it's on a state-by-state basis. So this ruling did not necessarily open up the floodgates, but it helped immensely as far as legalizing and regulating sports betting goes. And then you figure if that's available to consumers, especially on their phone, then online gaming is going to become available to those same consumers.
I love it. Yeah. And I finally found the email, but it's basically from the Poker Players Alliance saying that this, the Supreme Court ruling in this direction could potentially have tons of implications in the online poker space. And I guess like the most interesting thing about a lot of this is that it's something we've been fighting about for like a real long time. Like I'm pretty sure that's what the Civil War was about. And I think it's interesting, the state, and it's the weed thing. It's like this, the states' rights versus, the overreach essentially of the federal government, or maybe this is like what we all think it should be. Like, it's interesting. I feel like that this is a battle that just continues to rage, like, sort of within our culture. But I love the idea that it's like on a more micro level, if this is what you want in your state and you want to live there and that's what you're into, like, get it done. Sports bet, play poker.
Right. The Supreme Court in their ruling said specifically, quote, the legalization of sports gambling is an important policy choice, but the choice is not ours to make. Each state is free to act on its own, end quote. So that's exactly what you're saying. Now, what I do see potentially happening in the next 5 to 10 years or so is what the NBA wants. And the NBA has been at the forefront of legalizing and regulating sports betting to make it protected, to protect not only their side of the coin, but also for sports bettors so they don't have to deal with a bookie or an offshore unregulated website. And what the NBA wants is a federal framework for all of this. So they want Congress to install a law that would open up, legalize, regulate, and tax sports betting on a federal level. They think that's the safest way to go. They think that's a way to establish a base of rules that every state would have to use instead of just going state by state. So it very well could happen where Congress puts in a law that regulates sports betting. And again, online gaming, you have to figure would be attached to that law. That would be the absolute dream, and that would open up all the floodgates for everybody.
I mean, everyone knows how I feel about a lot of this stuff, but to me it seems so you're right. Like with all the sort of nitty gritty and nuances and all the little elements and pieces, when all the states are doing it differently, it does make it much, I mean, obviously the pool is smaller and these type of things, but it also makes it so much harder to know what's going on. Even like with carrying a weapon or whatever, like, oh, well, you can't drive from like this state to that state or this county. And I mean, really trying to keep up with all these laws does make it really difficult. And if there was sort of a blanket something, and also to me, I'm just like, hopefully, okay, if major league sports, if the NBA with all the money that they have start pressuring or putting some lobbyists in the right places, like we might actually have a chance, because the thing is that I guess these type of changes mostly it just costs money, and you need someone who has enough money in it or enough skin in the game to make it happen, because otherwise I'm just like, ain't nobody got to do it if they don't want to. Like, nobody's going to force you to sports bet if you don't want to. But, like, if you want to, this is America. It's free.
That's so true. And now the leagues, too, have maybe been against sports betting in the past, like the NFL, for example. They see this ruling. They see what the NBA is doing, what MLB is doing, what the PGA Tour is doing. And they're going to jump on board, too. So you mentioned the lobbying. When you have all of the major sports leagues who want that federal framework in place, you would think they'll be able to convince Congress to lean in their direction.
Convince.
Yeah, convince.
Like it. Grease a couple of palms. Yeah. No, this is all about the morals. I mean, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So the NFL has taken sort of a stance of like that it's morally wrong to bet or something?
The NFL believes that it impacts the integrity of their game. But it also helps their bottom line significantly, because if there was no fantasy football and there was no sports betting on NFL games, I have a feeling that their ratings would go down quite significantly. So you might as well adapt to this love that the country has of sports betting. And that's what the NFL is going to start to do, especially with the Supreme Court ruling.
Yes. Freedom. I'm so excited. Yeah. All right, well, let's get JNandez on the other side of the world. Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. We are live with JNandez Poker. Let me switch his nameplate over here for those of you who are watching, because I don't want you to get confused. We are also with Jeff Platt. Now, those who are listening to the show will already know this. You'll already have heard everything. You already know all the juicy gossip about JNandez. Just kidding. He's like one of the only people without any juicy gossip. But welcome to the show, boss. I've missed you.
Yeah, it's time to get back.
You look really skinny. Is this like just an outfit thing, or have you always been like super skinny?
New camera, new lighting. No, actually, I moved into a new place, and I was finally able to put together my perfect home gym, you can say so. And it pays off in certain ways. You just save a lot of time. And also, as a poker player, you have those days that end at 2 a.m. in the morning. Obviously, there's no gym in Switzerland that opens or is open until like after 10 p.m. basically. So there's no excuse to not hop on the cardio basically for like 30 minutes before going to sleep. No excuses basically.
Man, I love it. Of course you're into that fitness life. I mean, it only makes sense. Now, Jeff, you need to put your face just over this way a little bit.
Okay, over this way?
Yep, that's it. You're perfect.
Yep.
Sorry.
Right, we're good.
I let Tony Burns a couple interviews ago just be half face like the whole interview, and then afterwards I felt really guilty. Like nobody should be that guy.
I appreciate you letting me know at the beginning of the interview as opposed to midway through or the end.
Let's all be friends here. Okay, so JNandez, I feel like we caught up maybe the end of last summer. So we're, approaching another WSOP. We've got a lot going on, and I know you have plenty of content out there. People can figure out what's been happening. But for those of my listeners who don't, follow along all the time on YouTube, you had a separation with Upswing. It didn't seem like it was super dramatic, but of course there's not enough drama in the poker world. So we have to cover it. Like what went down and sort of, where has that left you now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people love drama, obviously, and they
included.
Like to create a lot of drama, specifically in the social media game, right? But at the end of the day, with Upswing, we created the PLO University at the beginning of 2017 and released it in, I think it was in April or in May, actually beginning of May when I traveled to Las Vegas. And the whole premise of this course was a one-time course where you basically put together 30, 40 videos or 30 or 40 hours of videos, and you push it out, and people can enjoy basically a full course, a course where you learn PLO. But throughout the year, there were some really interesting movements in PLO specifically, and that is the introduction of solvers in the PLO world was basically being introduced. So there was one program out there, which is still the only program out there that can actually solve PLO. And that usually sounds, again, very dramatic, as if you can just push a button and you play perfect PLO. It's not that easy, of course, but there is software out there that allows you to understand a lot more about PLO than it used to be just at the beginning of 2017, now mid-2017. So I heard about it from the guys I'm working with together in PLO. We started putting together ideas and putting together also a team that would research what to do with this program. Like, how do you become better with the solver? And the advantage of that really was that I was working already with no limit solvers. Although I wasn't playing no limit, I was so interested to see how no limit is supposed to be played, because I always felt like there would be analogies to PLO in some ways. There has to be something figured out that I can then take over to PLO. And suddenly I was in the flow of things and realized there's so much to learn now, and the cap on how well or how good you can become at PLO is so much higher, because now you have software that can figure out things much more precise than before. All this second guessing, which most of the coaching industry is based anyway, prior solvers, is basically an empirical style of teaching. I played a certain amount of hands, I had these results, this works. This approach gets more and more now exchanged into what is mathematically correct, what did the solver figure out, and how can we take advantage of that? And that's usually how people argue these days about no limit hold'em. And I saw this will happen in PLO at some point as well. So I think I want to hop on this train of actually being one of the first people in the PLO industry to introduce the solver to a bigger audience. And also there's so much new things to talk about as the solver was just released. We started running the first couple simulations that usually takes weeks and months to actually get to good results. And at this point, I felt very strongly about why not just create something new that is based on solvers that can so people can actually understand what the new momentum, the new movement in PLO would be, basically. On top of that, I coach people since a lot of years now. I started playing in 2011, and I started making videos in 2013, coaching people 2014, 15 on one-on-one base. And I basically coached over 100 people that are all professional poker players, for the most part at least, in becoming a better professional poker player or being financially independent playing poker. So I had all this experience from what it takes to actually be successful at poker in my own years, but also in whatever these guys were looking for, whatever they were struggling with. And the biggest thing I felt about, the strongest feel I felt about, is that it's all about the environment. It's not about watching a video or learning a strategy or even using a solver. It's about creating an environment where you have a constant progression, where you're motivated, where you find feedback, where you find also other members or other community members who have the same goal as you or similar goals as you can interact with, that support you throughout this journey. Because in my years, since I played professionally since 2011, it was a lonely journey for the first couple of years, and that's not for everyone. And it's definitely more enjoyable if you can actually connect with other people on this journey. So I felt very strongly about why don't we create a membership where we actually consistently are updating the information, because the solver is now changing so many things anyway. And one thing is sure, when a solver releases, and I saw this with No Limit Hold'em, whatever people think in the first couple of months from the solver will change completely, like in a year, where people realize, oh, actually I was creating the simulations in a wrong way. Like technically we didn't understand exactly what to do and in which way possible. So I realized updates are very important, but not only updates, also the feedback loop of talking to the members as well, and then creating content based on their feedback is really, really important. In a standalone course, and we all know that from buying courses online on all the subjects, on any subject basically, we get a certain selection of videos and that's it. And we can't really request more, or we can't really contact the creator and say, hey, why don't you make a video on this subject I was struggling quite a bit with? And that was basically the biggest feedback I got from the university, because at the end of the university, I actually introduced live streams, although it isn't a continuous product. It isn't a continuous course. I decided to make a couple of live streams and just go live and take open questions and start talking about the solver. And people really appreciated it. So I felt like, why don't we just build this into a membership where I can go live and do live streams and also create content based on people's feedback at all the times. That's how the PLO Lab basically came to fruition. That was the second product I made on Upswing Poker.
Dude, everything you're saying makes total sense. It makes total sense, though. And I think, well, for those of us, I guess this might be like way too next level to just kick off in the beginning, but it's interesting what you're talking about in terms of how there's all these shifts and changes, and, you know, the game is not stagnant. It's always moving. And so really any course, any learning in poker needs to have the ability to sort of be flexible. But what are some of the things that you're seeing change in PLO basically? Is it really changing that much? Is there a lot more people in PLO? That's what I always want to hope for.
It's not necessarily the people or the amount of people. Of course, specifically live PLO is blowing up quite a bit. It's actually on the understanding of the game, which means if you think about how people coached PLO a couple years ago, or myself, the first thing I did is I was comparing the best players in the world right now with what I was doing personally, and then figure how I can get better by getting closer to their approach, to their stats, the way they are playing. That's a very empirically based way of improving your game. You're just comparing yourself with the top in the game at the moment, the things that the guys are doing the best thing at the very current moment, and then you're trying to improve that way. But when software comes into play, and that's really where all poker moves to, in this regard, whether people want to hear it or not, it all moves to software. When software gets introduced, it changes the whole strategical landscape, because suddenly you can't say stuff anymore. You can't just make up things and say, well, like, you know, this sizing is the best sizing. You have to come up with research. You have to come up with numbers and with facts. And you can see it already in the high stakes and mid stakes no limit cash game scene. Even in MTTs, people argue or don't argue as loosely anymore when it comes specifically to professional poker. They have facts, they have numbers attached to it. When you are open shoving the button in a tournament, it's not just because of it or because you think the other person was weak. It's based usually on numbers. Like, this is a plus EV shove, this is not a plus EV shove. And whenever such a software gets introduced into any game, it changes the whole perspective, because suddenly the experts will not anymore remain experts, because everyone suddenly gets better and moves more into this GTO region, so becomes a less exploitive player. And usually in any game before software gets introduced, the best players are very often also very exploitive based. So they basically understand the meta pretty well. They understand what their opponents are doing wrong and take advantage of it. But when everyone moves closer and closer to GTO, it doesn't work anymore, basically, as well. And the best players and the players that will stand the test of time are the players who will understand the software the best way possible and also understand the meta game around the software. What that means is, when software gets introduced into any game of poker, there is a shift that takes place, and it takes time, it takes years. And if you understand the meta of your stake, you realize that, oh, these guys right now just discovered these concepts. In No Limit Hold'em, for example, it was betting small on the flop, or not c-betting much out of position, or 3-betting more linear range. So you see those shifts are taking place in certain people's strategy, but if you're one step ahead, you take advantage of that meta game of what people perceive to be good right now, and you're still exploitive, but you're actually able to capitalize on your situation, because you're one step ahead of this shift. And that's basically where I saw a big chance, because the solver just got introduced, and it takes a lot of time, dedication. It takes also resources financially to run those simulations for weeks and months. And we put together a small team that were just dedicated to do that. And I saw that I can leverage this in the best way possible and do coaching that would not be anywhere else, because very few people would have the amount of information I would have. On top of that, the team I can leverage. And as well, very few people would actually be interested in spreading that information, because they wouldn't have a big benefit of it, of just going live or just talking about, hey, I did some work in the solver, I want to share it with you guys. So that's where I saw a lot of shifts, basically, and also advantages. Whenever things move, new opportunities opens, new doors open, and that's exactly what happened in the mid of the last year with the solver introduced in PLO.
So now that you're introducing or I should say incorporating all of this into your teaching, do you feel now like your coaching style is maybe more open to all PLO players? Like if I'm a PLO player who's just starting and I'm grinding 25, 50 cent online versus if I'm a live PLO player playing 25, 50 live?
I'm a very strong believer in concepts always. So it doesn't really matter what kind of stakes you are playing. There are certain things that go on meta-wise. Certain players will make less mistakes and you can not really exploit them as much, of course. You want to take care of that as well. But at the ground level, it's all about the concepts. It's all about understanding why is something true and why is something else not true? And what does that mean in the context of our strategy? And with solvers, it just gives you a better position in terms of authority because you actually can prove certain things. You can say, okay, this is how it's supposed to be played. And when you look at the whole game tree, so that means if you, for example, start arguing about should you c-bet the flop or not, the reason is not, it doesn't lay in this, doesn't lay in the flop in itself. It lays in the way your preflop range is made up and in the way the turn plays and the river plays and the stack to pot ratio is. And when you're able to be in a solver, when you're able to work with a solver, you can actually check on all those factors so you can see the whole line come together. And suddenly you start arguing different. You say, well, the reason we are c-betting so much is if you think about the pre-flop range, if you think about what will happen on the turn and how many shifts are taking place on the board texture, it makes totally sense that we do need to check here or we do need to bet here because of how it all comes together. And suddenly, because you have software, you're able to actually explain these things much more conceptually instead of empirically. For example, I play PLO 500 and c-betting 60% works well. I have a great win rate. Like that is not helpful because many players that are listening to this advice are not playing the same game that I'm playing. So they are in a different environment. And for that reason, it comes all down to how strong are your tools. And those tools are built by having the strongest concepts.
So I think this is a question that comes up pretty much for anyone who's either coaching or creating content or doing anything besides just playing constantly. Putting so much focus and energy into coaching and also making this stuff not something that's sort of dormant that you can just put out there and leave, for forever, but something that's kind of evolving and engaging and being active in some social channels and talking to people. Are you really still able to play poker on the regular and stay up to date on all these things? And how are you sort of arranging where your energy is going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that comes also hand. I'm also not trying to ditch the question on how we, broke up with Upswing Poker, but it maybe comes hand in hand with this question as well. So on Upswing, I created this one-time course with a lot of videos. Again, the main issue here is I think it should be more focused on the journey and the environment. And then we start doing the membership. In the membership, the biggest problem that I saw is that I wouldn't have enough creative freedom to create the complete environment. And I was still basically a video producer like I was before on other coaching sites or on Upswing Poker as well. And producing videos is really only one angle of creating the perfect environment for someone to become a better poker player. And I learned that a lot because I coached so many people one-on-one. A lot of the times we wouldn't even talk about the strategy in the coaching. We would talk about the surroundings, about the mindset, about the organizational skills, about accountability, about support, about feedback, about building a circle of people that are able to support you and give you feedback on your hands on a regular basis. So these things seem to be very important when it comes to succeeding at poker. And I basically was looking for more creative space to actually make those investments as well into creating an environment that would support people to become better players. Now, when we did the PLO Lab specifically, I was doing a lot of videos. And the concept in itself was very good. I was getting paid very well, and it was a very comfortable arrangement for all of us basically because I basically just had to make the videos and that's it. And that is a very low responsibility thing for the situation I was encountering myself with because I was already used to making a lot of videos on a regular basis. It wasn't really challenging, so to speak, but it was rewarding financially. But I was looking to actually take it to the next level and create the environment more so than creating the good videos. And when I was trying to do that, I was basically looking to expand, first of all, the people around me who would help me to create the environment in itself, and also was looking for the financial backup to create a platform that would support the teaching, the environment to become good, instead of just a platform where you can host videos on. And so that's where basically Upswing and I found the biggest disagreements with, or priorities, or differences in priorities, basically. I'm looking to put a lot of investments into it and build a big team around it and change the way poker coaching is done a lot. And I was not being able to actually execute that because I was a content producer, a video producer, instead of someone who was obviously taking decisions or making the crucial decisions. So at that point, I felt like, okay, it probably is time to actually depart and trying to do this on myself and start investing into an own platform where I can design those things all based on my vision. And at that point, we departed. Then at the end of the year of 2017, I made 3 months more videos because of how the contract was laid out, and then launched JNandez Poker with around 4 people. And right now we're at 8 people. So coming full circle to your question, like how am I able to still play poker, win at poker, and stay sharp? I just expanded my team from basically a one-man show where I would do all the videos to now working with 8 people who all play PLO, who all understand PLO. And actually most of these guys are professional PLO players themselves. And suddenly we have this own unique mastermind in itself where we are creating content, we are creating concepts, we are creating presentations all together. I'm just the guy that is in front of the camera. So that makes it much easier for me to actually create the environment while at the same time keep playing and keep my game sharp in PLO.
Who's your team?
So, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. What kind of environment have you surrounded yourself with now?
So there are a few people who have different roles, basically. 2 of the guys that in our team actually coached before, and that's how we became friends, basically. When you coach someone, it's, again, as I mentioned, very often it goes outside of the scope of just strategical questions and answers. It comes more into this like mentoring role where you're trying to support someone's dreams or someone's way of making a living. And we became really close with these guys, and they became also a lot better in the process. So it's really nice to actually work with people that you I build up these guys' fundamentals, so they believe in the same things as myself. And they were also very receptive to the way I think about poker. Because one thing you have to realize is when you coach someone for a long time, specifically when this guy decides to pick you as a coach, it is often because he resonates with the way you think about the game or the way you think about the profession or the way you think about poker in general. And I was doing Twitch content for many years already before these guys contacted me. And everyone who contacts me for private coaching has watched at least 10, 20, up to 50 or 100 hours of JNandez before they contact me. So they know exactly what I'm about when it comes to the approach. I'm very professional. I'm very much focused on getting stuff done and being accountable. And these guys were already willing to accept that and also be formed. So first we build up their PLO knowledge, and then we just kept in touch. I usually keep in touch with the best students that I have, because they have always something new to bring to the table. They always have interesting things to discuss with. So the first core people are just people that I coached and are still playing professional PLO that we just started working more and more together in order to actually just become better as players. And then the third person, which is an absolutely key person, is Oresto. And Oresto was basically a guy who jumped on my very first Twitch stream that I did back in 2015. And he was just one of those supporters that turned into a loyal fan and then started doing my Twitch stuff, taking care of things without compensation and just being driven by whatever I was representing in his eyes. He was also a PLO professional player at this time. And he became more and more interested in just helping me to build up my brand on YouTube, on social media. And since 2015, we're basically working together to build up the JNandez Poker brand, even before Upswing Poker, even before JNandez Poker, the company in itself, which is working consistently to create content on YouTube and all those platforms. And he is today with his wife, actually, him and his wife, they're working both with JNandez Poker. She's doing a lot of the designs. She's doing a lot of the Adobe stuff, you can say, cutting videos, creating banners, creating designs, helping also with the website. So she's doing that, and he's doing a lot of the management of the company. And so that way we keep it really tight. We know each other for many years, and we also know PLO all very well. So that's a couple of the people of the 8 guys, basically.
So how do you see the future of the JNandez Poker brand playing out? So
what I really, really feel strong about is I'm I'm a consumer of content. That's just like who I am, basically. And I think a lot of us are, basically. In this world, in 2018, content is just amazing. If you go to YouTube, I mean, you can spend a lot of hours in there, of course, and it doesn't matter on which platform you are. It's all basically focused on videos, on the best pictures, on things that are visual. And I'm just trying to get poker training to a level that can compete with the content that people actually are consuming outside of poker. Because if you actually can watch a video and enjoy it as much as watching a recreational video on a Netflix movie or your favorite YouTuber that doesn't really deliver educational value but entertaining value, but if you can actually have this feeling and feel so engaged and happy about watching it at a JNandez poker video where you actually get better at PLO at the same time, then that is already a big accomplishment, because you make poker training much more consumable for people who are probably learning in a different way, who don't necessarily have 45 minutes to watch a video, or don't want to spend 45 minutes watching every time they tune in, basically. They might want to just watch 10 minutes or listen to a podcast or read an article or be in a forum post. So I'm basically all focused on creating this perfect environment for poker players. And the way I envision it is that we're building it together, which means I have now finally the decision power on a day-by-day basis. And what we can do is we can basically launch our company and then get the members in and interact every single day to see what can we do better, what kind of formats do you guys like, how long should the videos be, what kind of content are you looking for, what kind of questions do you have. I also chime in every single week into the live stream with the open Q&A just to get one more time that feedback loop and the interaction with everyone, and just creating an environment where every member has a way to participate in the future content and where things are moving. So when I think about the biggest pillars of where JNandez Poker basically is going, it is on the one hand, we have the community. And the reason I built up 8 people, and we are 8 people right now who all play PLO, is because in the PLO lab or now on JNandez Poker, we have around 1,000 customers or 1,000 members basically. And it's not that easy to manage that many people and be also attentive to their questions and give them feedback. So I knew right from the bat that if we're building something on our own, we need to be a lot of people in order to actually support all these guys. So we invest into having more coaches that are just out there in the forums, on Discord, and grinding it out and helping people basically get to the next level. And the next thing is content in itself. Once again, I'm a big believer in content. I love content. And I think content should be done much more thoughtful, basically, in poker. I watch so many educational videos or courses outside of poker. It's just what is required and also enjoyable if you want to make anything happen in this social media game, so to speak. And what I saw is that people pay a lot of attention to details, to having good camera quality, to having good sound quality, to making videos that are fun and visual. So the first thing I felt strongly about is the videos need to be shorter, or most of the videos need to be shorter, because no one wants to spend every single time 45 minutes when they open up a video. Sometimes they only have 10 minutes. And the way people consume content is also not necessarily on their computer, because the computer is also already kind of old school. It's more on their phone. So we have to find ways to actually create content that you can enjoy on your mobile phone and that are short, because now you are actually becoming part of, like, you're adjusting to people's lifestyles, which is we're on the fly, we're traveling, we have 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there. I can open up a video at JNandez Poker. It takes 10 minutes to watch. I get the concepts. I can enjoy it on my phone. I can close it down or go to Discord and ask a question, interact with the coach right away. Like, that is an environment that I think people would appreciate. And all we do is basically building it up to this point. And the last thing that we're investing on that I felt also very strongly about is, I think the way people like to learn poker the most by far is by playing poker. And everyone used this excuse in the poker industry before. It's like, well, like, I could watch the coaching video, but I rather just play because I also get better, right? It's a good excuse, or potentially also kind of a lie, which is not always holding true, basically. So what I felt strong about is, why don't we create a software where you can actually play poker, but we will teach you the concepts while you're playing poker for free in our own software. And that's where we're investing now all the revenue that comes in as well into a software on your phone, again, because we're focused on mobile phone as well, where you can actually play poker, then teach the concept and say, well, the way you want to see it on ace high boards is X, Y, Z. Here are the concepts in 3 minutes. Play 10 hands afterwards and see if you understood the concepts correctly. Answer 5 questions afterwards to see if you can really pinpoint the reasons for it, and then get an accuracy rating. And that way you have a poker training that is much closer to playing poker. And that way it is supporting people much better in their learning process, because it is actually very similar to what they're doing then at the table playing poker.
It's also in terms of just how they've proven that people learn. This is like one of the only ways, instead of just regurgitating ideas or understanding, memorizing concepts, that like the only way that anyone can actually learn is if they hear concepts, use them with their like all, you know, because some people are visual, some people are like tangential, they need to like touch things, something. But like if you can make someone do something, it's like how we learn math and all this. If you can like show the people the blocks, then they get it. Anyways, that is amazing. First of all,
how people learn best is with mistakes.
Yeah,
That's
of course,
people,
or not, depending.
Yeah, that's true. But I actually heard something really interesting recently, and that is when you reach the age of 25, and unfortunately we're all slightly past the year of 25. But when you get closer to 30, I'm getting 31 now, it becomes much more difficult to actually learn. And the easiest way and most likely way someone is going to learn who is already 30 or older is if they just get hit in the face, basically. If something dramatic, if something happens that's really bad, that's usually how people change, at least when they become older, because people don't want to change. They don't want to necessarily change their worldview or even their strategy in poker once they get older. They have their way of playing, they have their way of thinking. But when a big mistake happens, that's usually when people shift things. So if you're able to actually listen to a concept and then make a mistake, you're like, oh, wait a moment, I think I actually don't understand it, because it shows me this red button and it says wrong. I actually don't understand it. And that's an easier and cheaper way to learn than actually looking at the videos, going to the poker tables, and then losing. And because it takes a long time until you realize in poker that you're actually not a winning player, because it's all variance. Even if you're down 100 binds, I'm just running bad. Well, sometimes it isn't running bad.
And it's that psychological thing, though, too, right? That we will always in the moment we realize that we made a mistake, maybe, but then afterwards we forget and think, oh, I remember those 10 hands I won; those were awesome. And yeah, so it's definitely something that needs to happen right then. You need to be able to evaluate what happened, what went wrong. I keep being frozen, and it's terrible.
No worries. It's only very small lags. You're okay. On my end, you're okay. You can keep the dance on.
I just want to make sure. But I wanted to ask you, because when we first talked, I mean, gosh, almost a year ago, you were putting out a ton of content already. You were doing a lot of content creation. You were doing a lot of coaching. So JNandez Poker, what you're working on now, this is something that's actually a new baby, where you're just sort of incorporating a lot of the stuff you were doing already. But this is something that's totally new and different.
Correct. It's a new company. It's a new role also for myself. I always felt very strongly about, I think I talked about that the last time, because I always talk about this, but I love the idea of taking on more responsibility the older you get. It's a way of growing up. You take on more responsibility. If you're 20 years old, you're focused like a lot on yourself and your own responsibilities, trying to get your own stuff together. But when you get older, you start to feel this urge also of taking on the responsibility for someone else or for something else. And that's always how I felt about it. It's like, okay, if I want to grow up, if you want to become more of an adult, if I want to become also successful in my own eyes, it means to take on more responsibility. And that's why I also felt always very strongly about creating a company where I would actually be working together with people who believe in the same core values as myself. And that's really 101 what I can say about JNandez Poker. I know all these guys for years, and they understand exactly the way I think. And although they have their own twists, of course, they all believe in the same thing, which is poker is awesome and poker has a long future, and we're trying to embrace it. We're not trying to slow it down. We're not trying to hold it back. We're actually trying to take it to the next level, even if that next level means something different than what it meant 5 years ago, basically. And the way that we're teaching and the way we're creating content and creating a company, I think is the first sign of it. It is open and it is more based on education, more based on professionalism. It's more based on getting personally also to the next level in terms of self-improvement, instead of focused as much on just the game in itself. It's more the lifestyle around it. It's more the lessons you learn from it. It's more what kind of person comes out of it when you are actually playing poker and identifying with a poker player over several years. That's my progression personally, and I want to drag it out there. So I think there's a lot of space and a lot of room to do a lot of things still within poker. I want to go deep in poker and not outside of poker. A lot of people at the moment are basically turning away from poker and are looking for new opportunities and whatnot. I believe that there's still something to be gained by staying in poker, using the expertise, and also using this huge potential of a lot of players that are now getting to their 30s and have a lot of potential and creativity, and they're motivated to do something in the world, and get these guys basically on the right track. And I can tell you, like, one of the biggest signs, in my opinion, that you have someone in your circle that cares about you and also believes in you, that you thought would be too big for you. But because he puts it out there, you're like, wow, like this, I mean, you're putting it, like you see me higher than I see myself. And that is a good friend. And I had this pretty recently, actually. I went to Las Vegas in February to the 10X conference. So the 10X conference, you can see it, by the way, here on my shirt and here. The 10X conference is basically a business conference from Grant Cardone. And this guy, it's like a motivational conference, you can say, almost. There's also some business as well being talked. But the point is, this guy puts together 10,000 people, puts it in one arena, and just holds this amazing conference that is totally new school. Like, there's music, there is all those new visual elements that you see on YouTube, basically put in person with 10,000 people in one conference room. And the energy is just amazing, of course. Over 3 days we're there. I come in with 4 guys from JNandez Poker, as well as my friend John. So John, who's an American, gets there as well. And when I fly back after the trip, he calls me up like a week later and says, yeah, Fernando, I was thinking about you. And the thing is, you know, at this 10X conference, the only thing I can think of is, why don't you do the 10X conference for poker? Why don't you bring these guys together and get a Phil Galfond on stage and talk about his run at once poker and what it takes to build this company? Why don't you take other poker players on stage and let them share what you are already sharing through social media, and let other people benefit in the industry and make it more like a community where people are sharing and caring with each other, instead of this in this situation where everyone is just trying to like get the last dollar out of poker, but more like embracing it. And when he said that, I realized, wow, this is a big vision, and I think that's exactly what I want to do, basically. So that's where we're going. So
along those lines, we've talked really throughout this last hour or so on the importance of building a network of sorts, building an environment to surround yourself with. What would your advice be to players who are maybe just starting out in poker or just transitioning from Hold'em to PLO, as far as creating that kind of network for themselves, for developing a list of people that they can go to themselves? I told the story last time, like how I invested a lot of my bankroll actually into education in poker when I started out. Started with $15,000 in 2011 and spent $5,000 on just coaching, basically. I'm a strong believer in finding someone else that can help you, or a community of people. That's obviously also why I created a PLO mastermind, in order to bring those guys together and also to have access to someone that you believe in, believe that he's able to guide you basically in the whole journey of poker. But all I'm saying is, I think people should be more confident about investing in themselves. And if you feel very uncomfortable investing in yourself, then most likely poker on a high level or poker with highly financial rewards might just not be for you, because you don't want to take it that serious. And that is okay too. But I think we live in a society right now, specifically with social media, where everyone is basically trying to tell you, hey, you can do this, like you can be ripped as
whatever, and at the same time you can be super intelligent and build a business and make the money and have the cars. You can have it all. But the reality is they're trying to sell something. So you can't have it all most likely unless you build it up, of course, over years and years and years. But for most people and where they are right now, they should just pick something, and then not become so distracted and disturbed by all those seductive ideas that social media puts on you, basically. And when you start picking a thing and going with it, suddenly it becomes much clearer what you should do. Because when I made the decision to be a professional poker player, I don't have to think about, well, should I go all in on this PLO course? Should I go all in on this coach? Should I invest my money into this instead of focusing on something else? Because I already made my decision, basically. And I like this quote that says, if values are clear, decisions are easy. So just become clear of what you actually want. And a lot of the times we have to be true with ourselves and say, it sounds kind of nice, but I actually don't really want it. So I'm probably going to get disappointed because I'm creating something or someone put an idea into my head that is actually not me. And I will figure it out later, and it will hurt more because I will feel like someone who can't accomplish something, but you can. It's just that you get distracted too much.
Amen. I'm living that dream. Well, we're already like 10 minutes over, but I just have one question that I did want to ask you. This is also for I feel like my own personal life. So there's a lot of, I guess I respect you. You're someone who obviously has a lot of integrity, but also someone who's a very forward thinking person in business and in life. What's your take on crypto and a lot of the sites that are moving towards, a lot of people in our chat have been asking, what your thoughts are on poker coming back to the US and that, and I'm not particularly worried about getting into that at the moment, but what are your thoughts on crypto and how it can affect the poker space? Oh, and also I have to tell you, because like 80 people have told me to say this and I haven't yet, that Heads Up Master is your number one fan. Or something. LOL.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Good to know. Okay, crypto. So crypto is the biggest exemplification. I'm not sure if that's a word. Exemplification. No, it's the biggest. It's the easiest example that illustrates what I was just mentioning. Whenever something new comes up that looks like a big opportunity, and it might be a big opportunity if you go all in on it, then a lot of the times people are going to try to tell you, you don't have to go all in on it. You can just make the money like that. You don't have to focus. You don't have to be a specialist. You don't have to be an expert. And that's just like very, very infrequently true. Like I actually was on the upside of crypto because I bought quite a bit of crypto, actually too much. I shouldn't have bought as much because I was distracted myself and was on the upside of it, but then also realized that you can also get burned really hard because when everyone tells you that you can't go wrong, you start believing it. And it's very easy to feel that way if you're in social media, because when one company, when one company of a social media platform realizes that you're interested in crypto, suddenly you see the ads on every single platform. Yeah. That's called retargeting. And suddenly you feel like, oh, wow, everyone is talking about crypto. And it's amazing because everywhere I go, it's about crypto. But this is not really how the internet works. Like they are following you to tell you a consistent story that this is now the new thing. So I would just say, be careful, like pick a thing. For me, I went out of crypto actually in beginning of 2018 because that was the point where I decided, hey, if I actually want to go away from the comfortable way, which I had with Upswing Poker, having a really good paycheck and just having to make videos and playing poker, that's a really comfortable lifestyle. If I want to create a company and take on this amount of responsibility, I need to go all in with my focus on this one project. So I just bought out of all the crypto that I had because I said, I don't care about like what happens in the future because I can't care about it. I'm not an expert and I can't spend the time in there. And I would just tell like the people out there, like if you build up a skill set in poker over the last 5 years, or you're trying to now not take advantage of it just because you see an opportunity, it's very easy to be opportunistic in these days. And I would just say very often, if something looks very, very attractive, specifically on social media, I would be kind of careful because most likely you have to be an expert to make a lot of money.
Dude, that is like the quote that we're taking out for this. If it looks really attractive, be careful. And you need to be an expert if you want to make a lot of money. Like, amen. I just love you. It's just always so good to have you on. I mean, we're like a million hours over already, but be sure, let's talk about it again. Where can everyone find you? What's the easiest ways to get in contact with you and to be a part of this PLO team if the fans are into it?
Absolutely. So again, we just opened up our company in 1st of April at JNandezPoker.com. You can find me under the same name on the social media platforms. If you like longer form content, for free on YouTube, of course, I do hand analysis. You can also see actually some sneak peeks into the mastermind on YouTube, and otherwise on Instagram. I'm right now showing off the freshly acquired kittens that I got. So talking about more responsibility, my girlfriend always wanted to have cats, and I didn't grow up with animals basically. But she did, and she also has a horse, for example, that she rides for like 10 years already every single day. So talking about taking on more responsibility, I felt like this could be a good next step for me as well. And I love it. I mean, my Instagram is now almost too full. I mean, my Instagram stories are almost too full of kitten stories. And some people even text me and say, the poker means nothing to me anymore. I'm just tuning in for the kittens.
That sounds like me. That's probably me in there. Okay, amazing. Well, we've got Ruaz Khan, who also wants you to know that Heads Up Master loves you. He wants you to do your trademark BAM one time.
Oh, yes, please.
Can we get BAM? Oh my gosh. This is how you win. This is how you win. Just like this guy. Well, I always appreciate seeing you. I hope I see you maybe this summer. Apparently you've already been to Vegas once this year, but
I will be at the WSOP actually, because people are also looking for live PLO as well. And basically the way we do it at the mastermind is we do those small courses which have like 8 to 12 episodes, very similar to Netflix. I love Netflix, and therefore we decided to do a very similar course structure or content structure as Netflix. And one of the courses will be live PLO, JNandez in Vegas, and basically a team will follow me around Vegas while I'm grinding it out there, and we create a lot of content on it, coaching content. So I will be in Vegas specifically in the beginning, so we can push out the course before the WSOP ends, of course. But it would be nice if you guys are around, catch up anytime.
Dude, that sounds amazing. All of the above. All of the above. And also, like, I'm not living in Vegas anymore, so I'm going to be available for a few happy hours because I won't be driving. So if you ever need to just, like, kick back and relax, you need a cat babysitter or whatever, I'm here for you.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you very much.
All right. Deuces. Well, it's always a pleasure to have JNandez on. I hope we have him on again 10 million times. He can come on whenever he wants. Also, I just realized it's so funny because we shot a couple of these things, and I realized I had his and hers poker on the day that we shot JNandez. So, like, we look like we're in different outfits and lives every single time. It's like I could have put things differently and it might have looked less crazy. So for those who are watching, like, you're just getting a taste. This is what Jeff and Sarah look like a week apart every time.
It's like we need to correlate our wardrobes. Podcast episodes.
Yeah, and my makeup was a little dramatic on the his and hers one, so I was like, man, this is really jarring. Like, this is crazy. Okay, I wanted to bring up one story. So we've got Chad Holloway back in the mix. I don't know if you guys know, he's been writing for us for ages. He won a bracelet a couple years ago. He is, I can't remember what his title is. He's basically like the media guy at the MSPT, and he's back on board at PokerNews. He's going to be writing more stuff for us, which I, for one, am really excited about. I love his writing. He's got a deep love of the game. He's also got a podcast, if y'all didn't know, the LFG podcast, and he's got good stuff coming out. But he wrote, this is a series that we do periodically, which is like, where are they now? What happened to said person? And I actually, as I think we've discussed, before did not really come into the poker scene until 2010. So there's a lot of people who made splashes in the poker world before I came on board that I just haven't heard of or didn't know about. And he wrote a story about Randy the Dream Crusher Jensen. Of course, I felt deeply connected because he ended up in Colorado, but you guys should check out the article. It's really interesting and really candid. And, I think he basically says that he was playing like super high stakes, for a very long time and got into a spot where he alleges that he got cheated out of like $300K in a game with Russ Hamilton and Freddie Deeb, who he says were colluding. And I don't know why you'd be playing a three-way game anyways. That sounds crazy, but I guess like,
or be playing a poker game with Russ Hamilton.
I'm like, you guys are crazy. And, but basically he had like a nasty divorce and, which sometimes I think, oh my gosh, like having a nasty divorce is really traumatizing and it takes forever. And I think, he talked about things with his kids, trying to get custody, his wife, like basically stealing all of his money, driving without a license. He ended up having to go to jail in Colorado, which actually, my dad had a similar thing. You can't drive without a driver's license, especially if you do it a couple times. You're going to jail.
Right. Very simple.
And it's usually like you usually lose your license because of a DUI. So it's like, and then like when you're driving again, are you usually drinking something? He didn't get into that part of the story, but I love it. So many people are so hush mouth about like the dark parts of their life. They just want everybody to be perfect. And it's something that's so attractive to me is when people are like, yeah, dude, I like have been at a low and I am grinding my way back. And
he's cool.
Yeah.
So he finished second in a WPT event, a big WPT event for more than $650,000. And this was back in, I think Chad called it the heyday of the World Poker Tour, those original episodes on the Travel Channel. He was at a final table with Chip Reese and Barry Greenstein. So he was effectively on top of the poker world, maybe up until 2007, where he finished sixth at a WSOP Omaha 8 or better event for almost $60K. And then he was just gone, like you mentioned, just like that. He had so much to deal with. And now you're starting to see him, the Dream Crusher, pop up in a couple smaller tournaments here and there. He had a cash in a small circuit event in Vegas and a PLO event. He's played a couple of Venetian events and won a couple $1,000s here and there. So he's on the comeback, and it's just like you said, he's grinding his way back. He was on top of the world. It's not always easy when you're there. He's had some issues, and he's starting to get things back.
I love it. And he even talks about, like coming out of jail. It's like, I've seen it personally, right? When you come out of jail, it's really hard to like pick your life back up. It's like, okay, your life has just been totally paused for a while. And so seeing these little cashes, and it's cool because basically Chad even said, like, we just saw him at an MSPT and like someone approached him and said, are you this guy? And there was all this like interesting kind of weird backstory because he disappeared and then someone started a thread on 2+2, which was like, where it happened to him? And then he got on the thread on 2+2 and was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And people were like, is it really him? I don't know. And then he just disappeared again. And I love that too. It's a little like John Teeter, like popping into a forum and like, is this person the real person? And then, but yeah, like I just love it. I just love that candor. And so I wanted to give a little shout out. It's a good story. And he said he's coming to the World Series this summer. So hopefully we can get him on the podcast or get him in a video of some kind and talk it out. I mean, he looks like a boss is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like he looks like he's like had a few drinks and like maybe smoked a few cigarettes.
I think he has some entertaining stories from back in the day, both poker related and non-poker related. I think he'd be an interesting conversation and a great kind of sit-down interview. And like you said, he'll be out in the summer he says the whole thing. I don't know if that means all WSOP events, but it might. So hopefully we see him a lot.
Randy, We want you. We want you for our show. I'll talk to Chad. We'll see how we can get it. I want to give a shout out one more time to our sponsor, globalpoker.com, with $1.25 million in guaranteed cash prizes, including $100,000 for the main event. You don't want to miss the Global Poker Championships Rattlesnake Open. Head to globalpoker.com and enter today. Now, Jeff, you're not going to be entering today because you have day 2 at the Venetian, which we're rooting for you, but, I want to hear about your Rattlesnake Open experiences next week. And we're going to try to get next week on the show, potentially 2 guests. We don't know. Right now we're looking at getting Sam Simmons from Poker Go / Poker Central. I really hate that. I want them to just choose one so that I know what to say.
I think Poker Central, because that's the company, and Poker Go is the app. The Netflix of poker.
Right. Okay. So Poker Central, Sam Simmons, they've got a ton of stuff coming out. They've got a big production coming out this summer. They just had a room open at the Aria studio, which is super bossy. Yeah, I saw some pics, dude. It looks super nice. And I'm just going to put my sunshades on, and we'll try to figure out, let me know if you guys have any good ideas for what the giveaway is. But we're going to give one of these sunglasses to Jeff when I get to Vegas, but there's a couple other ones, and I think you guys are going to like them. $20. Protect our eyes.
Sure.
All right, good luck. As everyone knows, thank you, Roberto Moreno, our editor, and everyone else, and mostly Jeff. I'm so happy for him. And we'll see you guys next week. De who says?